The music echoed softly through the grand ballroom, its polished floors shimmering under chandeliers worth more than everything Daniel Owens had ever owned. He stood by the far corner, mop in hand, wearing a faded uniform that smelled faintly of bleach. Tonight was the annual Meridian Tech Gala, an event for the city's elite, where the air itself seemed too expensive to breathe. Daniel wasn't invited, of course. He was there to clean. The guests didn't see him. They never did. But tonight, fate had other plans, the kind that begin quietly, unnoticed, and end with everyone holding their breath. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the power of good hearts to change lives, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel. Stories like this remind us that compassion still matters, and your support keeps them alive. Daniel had been working as a janitor at Meridian Tech's headquarters for nearly 5 years. Once he had dreamed of becoming an engineer, building the kind of machines that could change lives. But dreams don't pay hospital bills, and when his wife passed away after a long battle with cancer, Daniel had no choice but to trade his future for survival. His daughter, Lily, was only 8 at the time, too young to understand why Daddy always came home tired, too proud to complain when dinner was just soup again. He promised her he'd never give up, that someday things would get better. But promises can't fix broken hearts or unpaid rent. Still, Daniel was grateful. The janitor job wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. He worked nights so he could spend mornings walking Lily to school, her small hand gripping his as she told him about her favorite stories. She was his light, the reason he kept going. When he looked at her, he saw the life he wanted to rebuild. But he also saw the limits of what one man could do. The Meridian Gala had always fascinated Daniel, even from a distance. Every year, the company transformed its glass atrium into a scene of glittering luxury. Musicians played live jazz, waiters in black suits carried trays of champagne, and the city's most powerful people mingled beneath golden lights. Daniel's job was simple: make sure no one slipped, no trash lingered, and no one saw him. Yet every year, as he mopped the marble edges and watched from behind the pillars, he imagined what it would be like to be seen, to be treated as someone who belonged there. Tonight, as he wiped down a spill near the stage, he noticed something unusual. A young woman stood near the piano, her white dress flowing like moonlight against the dark backdrop. She wasn't mingling or smiling. She stood still, her eyes distant, unfocused. Then Daniel saw it, the faint glimmer of a guiding stick in her hand. She was blind. People around her smiled politely, said a few words, and moved on, unsure how to act. But Daniel saw something in her face that felt familiar, the quiet loneliness of someone who's always being looked at, yet never truly seen. The young woman was Evelyn Hart, daughter of Charles Hart, the CEO of Meridian Tech, a man known for his brilliance, wealth, and icy demeanor. Rumors said he built his empire from nothing but had little warmth left in him. Daniel had never met the man, though he had once seen him walk through the lobby surrounded by security, too busy to notice the janitor holding the elevator door open. Yet here was his daughter, standing alone at her father's gala, her hand trembling slightly as she listened to the music. As the night went on, Daniel couldn't help but glance at her. The band began playing a soft waltz and couples filled the dance floor, spinning gracefully under the lights. Evelyn stood still, facing the sound, a faint smile forming on her lips. But no one asked her to dance. Daniel's chest tightened. He saw the polite pity in people's eyes, the way they admired her courage but still kept their distance. He knew that kind of isolation, being near people yet feeling invisible. And then something unexpected stirred in him, a thought so absurd it made him laugh quietly. What if he asked her to dance? A janitor and a CEO's daughter? The very idea was madness. He was covered in the scent of cleaning supplies, his uniform wrinkled, his shoes worn. He belonged to the shadows, not the dance floor. But as he watched Evelyn's expression shift from hope to quiet disappointment, something inside him broke. Maybe it was his daughter's voice in his memory. "Daddy, never be afraid to be kind." Or maybe it was just the raw humanity of the moment. Either way, Daniel put down his mop. He walked toward her slowly, nervous but resolute. Guests noticed him, Some frowned, others whispered. The janitor was walking into the spotlight. Evelyn turned slightly as she heard his footsteps. Daniel hesitated, then gently said, "Would you like to dance?" His voice trembled, but it carried sincerity that no title or wealth could imitate. There was a pause, the kind that feels like eternity. Then Evelyn smiled softly and nodded. Daniel took her hand, guiding her carefully onto the floor. The music swelled. His movements were awkward at first, cautious, but she followed gracefully, trusting him completely. He whispered directions softly. Step, turn, gentle spin, and she moved with serene confidence. Around them, the crowd fell silent. The janitor and the CEO's blind daughter were dancing, and somehow it wasn't strange or awkward. It was beautiful. Every motion spoke of respect, every step a quiet rebellion against the walls of class and appearance. As they danced, Evelyn's smile widened. For the first time that night, she looked alive. Daniel felt tears sting his eyes, not from pity, but from something purer. Connection. Humanity. He didn't notice that the band had slowed their tempo or that even the servers had stopped to watch. When the song ended, the ballroom erupted in applause. Evelyn turned toward the sound, laughing softly. "Thank you," she whispered. Daniel nodded, speechless. But as they stood there, Charles Hart, her father, stepped forward. The applause faded. His face was unreadable as he approached. Daniel braced himself, certain this was the end of his job, maybe even worse. But what happened next silenced the entire room. Charles looked at his daughter first, his expression softening. Then he turned to Daniel. "You reminded me of something I forgot a long time ago," he said quietly. His voice trembled slightly. "That dignity doesn't come from money. It comes from the heart." The guests exchanged confused glances. Charles continued, his tone thick with emotion. "You see, my daughter wasn't born blind. It happened because of an accident, one caused by my own negligence. I was too busy chasing success, too obsessed with being the man everyone respected. And in that pursuit, I failed the one person who needed me most." The room grew heavy with silence. Charles took a deep breath. "She doesn't know, but I've carried that guilt every day. Watching her smile tonight, it's the first time I've seen her truly happy since that day. And it's because of you." He turned to Daniel fully, his eyes glistening. "What's your name, son?" "Daniel Owens," he said quietly. Charles nodded slowly. "Daniel, I owe you more than an apology. I owe you gratitude. You reminded me what this company should stand for, compassion, not pride." He looked around at the stunned guests. "From this moment on, Meridian Tech will start a new foundation, one that supports people with disabilities and families struggling with medical care. And Daniel," his voice softened again, "you'll lead it." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Daniel blinked, thinking he must have misheard. "Sir, I'm just a janitor," he stammered. "Not anymore," Charles said firmly. "You're the reason this company will finally have a heart." The applause that followed was thunderous, but Daniel barely heard it. Evelyn reached for his hand again, her face glowing with gratitude. "I can tell you're smiling," she said playfully, and Daniel laughed through his tears. That night, the janitor and the blind daughter had given an entire room full of powerful people something money couldn't buy: perspective. Over the next few months, everything changed. Daniel became the director of the new foundation, working tirelessly to provide support for families like his. The media called it a miracle story, from mop to mission. But Daniel never saw it that way. He was still the same man who believed in hard work, kindness, and small acts that make big differences. He still took Lily to school every morning, still fixed things around their apartment, still believed in the simple goodness that started it all. And Evelyn? She became a close friend, even an inspiration to Lily, who adored her gentle voice and endless optimism. Together they attended community events, raised awareness for accessibility, and showed the world that beauty and strength often come from broken places. Months later, during another gala, one hosted by the very foundation he now led, Daniel stood on the same dance floor where it all began. This time he wore a suit, though he still felt like the same janitor inside. Evelyn approached him again, her white dress as radiant as before. "Shall we?" she asked with a smile. And as they danced, Daniel glanced at Charles standing nearby, watching them with quiet pride. There were no words needed, just understanding. That night, the music played softer, the lights warmer, and the applause at the end came not from admiration, but from shared humanity. People cried, not because they pitied Evelyn or marveled at Daniel's rise, but because they were reminded that kindness, real kindness, still existed in the world. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Every act of kindness, every story of hope, helps light another corner of the world. And before we end, tell us in the comments below, would you have done the same if you were in Daniel's shoes? Because sometimes all it takes to change a life is the courage to take one step onto the dance floor.